死なないために死ぬほど準備することなんて絵に秘めあらたことでしょう。光栄だけど買いかぶりっすよ。
Hello guys, it's me Simo Orahara, and in this video we will talk about the origin of the Final Getsuga Tencho technique that Ichigo used in his fight against Aizen Sosuke. This topic frankly is somewhat complex a little bit, because when we talk about Ichigo, we aren't talking about Shinigami or Hall or Quincy, we're talking about someone who has all these powers together, so determining the origin of this technique won't be that easy. And to give you a general idea of my theory, I do think that the Final Getsuga Tencho is a mixture between the Final Getsuga Tencho as a technique inherited from the Shiba family that was passed down from generation to generation, plus the Quincy stage of the final form. This mixture gave us this shape and this strength that we have seen. How? This is what we'll discuss together. First of all, let's talk about the first part of my theory, that is about the Final Getsuga Tencho as a technique belongs to Shiba family. Why did I say it's a technique specific to Shiba family? Because Isshin did not call it the last technique of the Zanpakuto, but he gave it a special name, which is the Final Getsuga Tencho. So that name Getsuga Tencho wasn't a spire of the moment. It didn't start with Zangetsu. No, it seems it's an ancient technique, and some members of Shiba family may have used it in the past, including Isshin Shiba, when he used the Getsuga Tencho in front of Aizen Sosuke. In addition, the Zanpakuto of Isshin and Ichigo are unusually similar. Both are related to the moon, Engetsu and Zangetsu, and Isshin's talk about the technique makes you think he has already tried to use it in the past, especially if we know that Shiba's family has many inherited techniques. For example, in one of the questions that were asked to Kubo about the technique that Ganjo used in his fight against Yumichika, he was asked if this technique is a forebring. Kubo replied, it's a technique of the Shiba family that has been passed down from generation to generation. And more than that, I do think that the Final Getsuga Tencho originally started with the founder of Shiba family, the family's first Shinigami, the first ancestor. How is that? If we go back to the story that Ichibi told us about how bleach words were created, if we go back exactly to the chronological order of the story, you will see the following. It was mentioned that there were 5 ancestors of noble families in the original war. In that war, there was still no such thing as Shinigami, or the current structure of what the races are like in Bleach. He only mentioned that they were the ancestors of noble families living in that world, and when the Hollows came to existence and the world began to move towards chaos, the ancestors began to give their opinions about changing the world according to their own beliefs. What is important to us is what the Shiba's ancestor wanted. He believed that the Hollows should not be wiped out of existence, but rather they should be purified, because they also have minds, and this process will be later one of the main tasks of the Shinigami, the purification of souls. And the important thing is that Shiba's ancestor tried to convince Ryo to do this job, the job of dividing the worlds by using his own power. But it seems that Tokinada's ancestor didn't like Shiba's ancestor's soft way of asking for Ryo, so he sealed him inside a crystal. Of course, in this period of time, the ancestors were not yet Shinigami, they were just souls. But after the sale of the Soul King and the division of the worlds and the existence of the Shinigami, Ichibi will say, and notice this paragraph, the Soul Reaper who was the ancestor of Shiba, meaning that the ancestor of Shiba became a Shinigami at that time, and this Shinigami as he felt some regret for what they did to Ryo. Ichibi said that the ancestor of Shiba was looking for a technique that would enable him to sacrifice his body in order to become in Ryo's place. And this issue of sacrifice, I previously talked about it, and I said that it's linked to the Shiba family, so that what the ancestor of Shiba was trying to do is the same as what Ichigo did when he sacrificed by his Shinigami power in order to save the world. So maybe the technique that Shiba's ancestor was trying to search for, its results and what he reached led to the existence of the technique of Final Getsuga Tencho. If we assume that in the past there were Shinigami of Shiba's family had done this technique before, is their shape were like Ichigo's shape in the Final Getsuga Tencho? And more than that, is it true that the price of doing this technique is to lose your power? Here we will move to the second part of my theory. So I say that it's not necessary that the shape of the Final Getsuga Tencho will be the same for everyone, because the technique is basically a Shinigami technique. Its general idea is that you become the embodiment of that technique. Of course, the Getsuga Tencho will differ in terms of strength from one Shinigami to another, especially since each Shinigami will have a Zanpakuto with different characteristics, and Ichigo is originally the most Shinigami with a special Zanpakuto, being a Zanpakuto with the power of Shinigami mixed with the power of Holo, plus the power of Quincy. I mean, for example, most of the Shinigami when they release their Zanpakuto, we don't see any indication that they possess an additional power. But with Ichigo it's totally different. When he released the Horn of Salvation the first time, he gave you the impression that it's true that I'm Shinigami and I have a Zanpakuto, but it's not an ordinary Zanpakuto. It's based on a Sauchi with holo powers. So we see the horn and the mark of spider on his chest. He even unleashed Gran Ray de Zero. So what I'm trying to say is Ichigo's Final Getsuga Tencho, it's true that it will be based mainly on the inherited technique of Shiba family, but since Ichigo has an additional power which is the power of the Quincy, it will be very different from any other Final Getsuga Tencho was done before, especially when we know that the Quincy has also similar technique to the Final Getsuga Tencho, and it's the final form of the Quincy. Almost the two techniques are similar in many points, and the most prominent of this point is that as soon as you use this technique, you will get supernatural power, limitless power, but in return you will lose that power. And for that I have said, is it really you would lose your Shinigami power if you use this technique? What if Ichigo lost his power because White Tensei Zangetsu merged the technique of the final form of the Quincy with the Final Getsuga Tencho, and that's why Ichigo lost all his power? Because if we have returned to Ichigo's words about the Final Getsuga Tencho, he has just said, you will know then why wouldn't Zangetsu teach you that technique. And later, we saw that White Tensei Zangetsu told Ichigo the truth of the technique after Ichigo accepted his blade and thus the technique was activated. So how was it with Isshin? When Isshin entered his inner world, did Engetsu tell him directly that I won't teach you this technique because you will lose your powers? Because if it was like this, why didn't Isshin tell Ichigo about this? To tell him, son, I will teach you this technique, but know that if you used it, you will lose your powers. Are you ready for this choice? That's why I say that maybe the Final Getsuga Tencho can be activated without actually losing your powers. Losing Ichigo's Shinigami power may be mainly because the Osan, and I mean here the Quincy power, mixed the final form of the Quincy with the Final Getsuga Tencho, and therefore Ichigo lost all his powers. Notice what Sokin said when he was talking about the final form of the Quincy. He said that if you remove the glove, you will get great strength, but you will lose your powers. Ichigo also had a glove, and when he activated the technique, the glove was no longer there. And this is similar to Yuryu in a similar way. Of course, someone may say, the final form of the Quincy requires training for 7 nights, and a special glove, etc. Yes, it's true that the final form requires a special training, but Ichigo is also a special case. Ichigo has activated the blood vein in front of Yhwach without any training, and Isshin mentioned before that the blood vein needs to be learned by any Quincy who isn't a pure-blooded. Therefore, the condition related to the loss of the power after using this technique, it could be because of the technique itself. I'm not denying that, and Ichigo has said it's called the final because it will lose your power after using it. Or as I said, this condition may be basically different from one Shinigami to another. The sacrifice is something that is not related to losing your Shinigami power. And the loss of Ichigo's power was because White Tensei Zangetsu gave Ichigo all his powers, whether Quincy power or Shinigami power. Especially if we know the Osan, and I mean here the Quincy power, didn't want Ichigo to be a Shinigami and he wanted to remove him from that path. So maybe he took advantage of the situation and decided that Ichigo would lose all his powers, whether Shinigami or Quincy, taking advantage of the Shiba family technique as well as the Quincy technique, the final form. And this combination of these two techniques gave us this mythical fates. And so guys, what do you think of the origin of this technique, and if it has to do something with the final form of the Quincy? Tell me your opinions in the comments, and see you guys in my next video.